Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to introduce our last speaker for today at Caregiver College. Leisa Pitchford from Glover Funeral Home will speak on end-of-life planning. And we want to welcome her. And after this, we're going to have our last door prize, so be aware of that. Thank you, Leisa.
I think y'all will be able to hear me. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'm usually pretty loud. Okay. Well, thank you guys from SARCOA for arranging this today. Hasn't it been informative and so much good information? And even if it's just some refresher things that we might have known and now we need to know more about it. So that's really absolutely awesome and a needed thing that they're providing for us. Okay, my name is Leisa Pitchford and I am with Glover Funeral Home. And I actually do the pre-arrangements and the pre-planning of your funeral or cremation, whatever your service is that you prefer. I can help you with that. And also, we're the only funeral home in town that has an aftercare program. I have a guidebook. So when the death certificates are available, and I do have someone in here that has actually benefited from this service that we provide recently, but it's a guidebook. And how many of you have had to either plan a funeral or close down, someone's estate? So, it's a lot of information. Yeah, and you may not know what to do. So a lot of you didn't raise your hands, so you probably would be glad to have a little guidebook to get you started on the right path. So this guidebook that I'm talking about, it's a broad guidebook, and it has a checklist of things you need to do now that you've got those death certificates. And then as you go through the book, it tells you what to expect as you handle the different things that you have to take care of. So that's one thing we're very proud of at Glover. We want our service for our families to go further than just the day of the funeral, because we feel like that's part of our call. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit because they asked me to talk about what do you do when death occurs. Sometimes people are just like a deer in the headlights. They don't really know. Okay, now what do I do? Maybe they weren't on hospice and didn't have that education, of what to do. Maybe it was something that happened unexpectedly. There's all kinds of scenarios because we don't generally plan our death. Mm-hmm. So when death occurs, you would make that call to the funeral home of your choice. Or if you're in the hospital, the nurse on that floor is going to be the head nurse, we always call them head nurses, the charge nurse or whatever. It's going to be the one that's going to make that call for the family to the funeral home. If you're on hospice, usually the hospice nurse will call us. And the reason for that, just so you know, it takes a big burden off of the family. You just, lost a loved one. You can't really think as clearly. That's just a known fact. But the main thing is because they have all that information that we need, and they can pass it to us without the family having to answer those questions that seem really inconsequential at the time that you've just lost your loved one, but it's very important for us. There's a lot of information that we need, and there's some things that we can begin doing in the background, in preparation for that family coming in, after the next day or whenever we schedule it. But when death occurs, that's the first step, is we're called, and one of our guys will be dispatched out there, and they usually, it's important to let them know, say if you're in the hospital with your loved one, or, pretty much in the hospital, just to let us know if the family's waiting, there with that loved one. That's an important thing for us to know, because we want the family to have all the time that they need, at that point. And I mean, not that we drag around because they don't, but it's just an important thing to know and what to expect when you walk in, if you've got a whole family in there waiting. So that's just a little tip that you can do. And then we, take the body into our care, and it's safely in our care until the family comes in at whatever the scheduled appointed time is. And the process, it begins there. If nothing has been done, and I mean in the way of pre-planning or pre-arranging your funeral or cremation or memorial service, whatever your choice is, you can pre-plan and pre-arrange this, and it truly is a gift of love to your family when you do that. That enables us to have all that information that we need, and so when the family comes in, we just follow the roadmap that the loved one has laid out and just go by whatever their wishes are, what choices they've made ahead of time in a non-crisis situation when everybody's thinking clearly. And I can tell you, family members are very appreciative of not having to make every single choice. Or maybe you're the caregiver, since we're talking about that today. Maybe you're the caregiver. Chances are, if that loved one has passed away and you've been caregiving for an extended period of time, the exhaustion kind of it rises, because you do what you have to do as long as you have to do it. Y'all heard of that? So when, death occurs, people just react and handle things differently. So us having all that ahead of time, I will go ahead and tell you that the way we do it at Glover, they can do a skeleton obituary, have it just about done. If you've done your pre-arrangements, like with me, and they can do a skeleton, and then the family just has to, correct or add or subtract, and it doesn't take, an hour to try to remember everybody, and oh goodness, we left out, Aunt Lizzie, and she's gonna be so mad after it hit the paper the next day, Have y'all ever had a situation like that? I mean, and it's not intentional. It's because you're not thinking as clearly when you have had a death experience with a loved one. So, and also getting the information for the death certificate. So important. Who better to answer those questions about you than your own self? All that information, your mother's maiden name and your dad's middle name, and and sometimes people just can't call it up. They're in crisis, and you just don't think the same way. So having all of that, it just takes so much off of the family to have to sit, and it probably more than halves the amount of time that the family would have to be at the funeral home for what we call the arrangement conference. And I know that sounds a little bit different because you've already pre-arranged, but basically that's a time for our funeral director to sit down with the family members. They might or might not have been a part of the pre-planning, okay? Maybe your children live out of town and they weren't a part of that. You and your husband or your wife took care of that ahead of time. And so that's a time for them to come in, and we go over what you've chosen, and then they're very happy to follow your direction. I always want to put it in a little bit of perspective, because your baby's your baby forever. They're your child forever. So let's think back to the time when we were expecting them. All that preparation that we do, getting that nursery ready and all that, and the baby's there, and you do everything that you possibly can to make their life wonderful and perfect, Then it's time for them to go to kindergarten. How many of you would just drop them off? I mean, they make us sometimes now, but You know, it's a big day, it's a big thing. There's pictures, there's walking them in, you know, getting all the supplies. They got to have the special outfit and special book bag, you know, matching lunchbox, all that stuff. That's called preparing, right? Preparing them for that day so that they feel very special and ready for the day. Then the next thing you know, they're graduating from high school and they're looking for a college, right? Or maybe they're choosing, you know, armed forces of some kind, or maybe they're choosing technical. It doesn't matter what they're doing. Usually, the parents are still involved, and they're still helping them, guiding them, preparing them for their next phase of their life, right? So you do all the things, you know, if it's going to college, all the dorm stuff and all the things. Then, the next thing you know, it's time for a wedding. Well, you know, that's a whole production these days. So, you know, do you just sit down at that point and say, well, you've got your college degree, good job? No, we are in there and we're helping them, we're preparing them, we're advising them, we're doing all the things that a parent does, even though they're really grown. So why would we leave them unprepared on the worst day of their life? And that's, you know, when they lose a parent. And it really is, it's a hard thing, and it's hard to face. So that's just, you know, just to put it a little bit in perspective. Now, you know, there's lots of different choices. You know, whether you go with a traditional, what we call a traditional funeral, meaning, you know, where you have the viewing, you know, visitation, your service, and your graveside. Whether you choose that your disposition is going to be cremation. It's not just that. You know, in cremation, there's lots of different choices that need to be made in that as well. I have people all the time that say, I'm just going to be cremated. I don't need to worry about it. But the point is that all that information, it doesn't matter what the disposition of your body is, whether you're going to be buried or cremated or whatever, we need all that information still. You know, all that biographical information, and having it ahead of time is such a gift and so nice to have. So, and I know that Denise has already talked, that was her name, right? Denise, yeah, has already spoken a lot on essential planning, but that's something that we feel very strongly about, and I'm not going to go back over that because she did a great job. But you do want to make sure that you've got your essential planning in place, and she gave you lots of information about that. Now, there's lots of benefits to going ahead and doing your pre-arrangements. That is the stress and anxiety that it relieves of taking care of that before the crisis point of death is such a benefit for each other. You know, a lot of times we say, I don't want my kids to have to do that. I want to do that. But you know what? If you're a couple, I don't know, most couples, they work as a team, right? And so you're actually giving a gift to each other as well as your kids. But I don't know about y'all, but it takes me and my husband both to make a clear sentence. So, you know, if one of the team is not there to listen and make the decisions, we're at a deficit. So, but I just want to tell you what is involved in doing a pre-arrangement conference. First of all, there's no obligation. You're going to gather information. Of course, the goal is that you will go ahead and do your pre-arrangements, but my job is to show you the whys and the benefits of doing that, okay? So, of course, what I've already spoken probably the most about is collecting that biographical information. We'll do that. That's the time-consuming part of funeral planning, whether it's at need or at pre-need, okay? So all that information that we need for that death certificate, and y'all believe me, it just needs to be correct. First time, amending a death certificate can be an ordeal. Let's just say that. We need it, like I said, we can begin on that obituary and save the family some time there. The next thing that we would do would be to create a well-designed ceremony. And I know I've talked with a couple of people today about, different situations that they had with their family. And statistics show us that families that choose not to have any kind of a pause in their life, meaning a memorial service, a funeral service, whatever your choice is, they don't begin as healthy healing process. It takes them longer to make it through, to dealing with things. So statistics show us and tell us that families need that pause in their life to come together and support each other and love each other. For our friends, and I know I'm not even going to talk about COVID because we're just praying it's going to be gone. But anyway, we do need each other. We do need support. And your life changes when you lose a loved one. And it's not just oh, well, that was yesterday, let's move on, with the next day. It's an important event in the family, and it needs to be treated as such. And it doesn't matter which direction you go, you just got to make sure that we have people sometimes that say, you know what, we're just going to do a family celebration of life, which is an option, So there's all kinds of different ways to memorialize your loved one, okay? But we want to do the very best job and provide the very best care and service that we can to our families, and I feel like that Glover does a great job with that. Kendall Glover is the owner, he and Caroline, his wife. Someone did think that I was Caroline, but I'm not. I'll let her keep that job. But anyway, so we would select that ceremony. That's step 2 in doing your pre-arrangement conference, okay? So that helps the family to confirm reality. And it may seem like just a formality that you walk through, but you've probably all been to a funeral and you have very vivid memories of it and how you felt while you were there and how, you got to see this one and that one and how you loved and supported each other. So it gives that family a chance to reflect and come back together. The third thing, we would select the merchandise, if you will, or the items of memorialization. So whether you are whatever your disposition of your body is, it doesn't matter. There's merchandise or memorialization items that have to be picked out, right? So you can do that, and I would guide you if you're going to go with a traditional burial. I would guide you to look at caskets and vaults and that kind of thing. If you're going to go with a cremation, I'm going to guide you in that direction. But the fact is that you're still going to have it down on paper what your choices are. That's the important point. The fourth thing is to provide the advanced funding. We never see inflation go down. It always goes up. So the beauty of going ahead and doing your pre-arrangements and funding it is that you guarantee today's cost. Now, you're not setting the day of death. Just go ahead and say that. I have people that tell me, well, I didn't want to come. I'm just so afraid it's going to, speed up my process. It's not. I promise. This is preparing and planning, So you provide that advanced funding. That is the most important of the 4 steps. That assures that the expenses are not left for others. And you guys, people don't mean to go out and leave, someone in a hardship. Nobody intends that, really. But if you don't prepare, that's the result, sometimes, and it's very unfortunate. So it is a tax-exempt status. You avoid that emotional spending. Y'all know, is anybody here a sales shopper, a bargain shopper? Yeah, so, sometimes you can get caught up in the buy one, get one, or the BOGO, or you can get 5 things for $100, or whatever it is. You've got to go gather up those 5 things, so that's emotional shopping. Y'all realize that, don't you? Okay. My name is Leisa, and I am a bargain shopper. But anyway, you do take that emotional part out of it. I cannot tell you how many families that we have come in, and their thought process is, because they've just lost their mom or dad maybe, my mother sacrificed my entire life for me. Whatever she did, all the name, all the things that mother did or did without for them. So I want to make sure I do the very best that I possibly can. It's like they feel like it's their last gift to their family member, okay? But think about this. What if mother was just a middle of the road gal? She didn't want no fancy fanfare. She wanted just to be put away with dignity and respect, okay? So that's, that can be a little bit of a problem. Like I said, you protect from that future inflation. So our services and our merchandise will be guaranteed, locked in, never to go up. And the things that I'm talking about when I say it's very clear, our services and our merchandise, those are the things that we set the cost for at Glover Funeral Home. That's your funeral service, hearse, the casket, your vault, all of that kind of stuff, our memorial package, all of that we can guarantee, okay, lock in today's cost. One thing that someone will ask me, I'm going to go ahead and answer it. The money is not held at our funeral home. You never want to do pre-arrangements and pay the money to the funeral home, because if something happened, you're kind of in a bad spot. So the government, the state, wants us to put that money in a third party, and it is an insurance product, but it is only an insurance policy for your funeral. That's it, and it's not an inflated amount. It's whatever today's costs are that we put on there, okay? Now, there are other costs that I'm sure you're aware can be involved. They're called different things: at-need cost, third-party services, cash advance items. All those are the same thing. It's items or things, services that have to be provided, but we don't set the cost for, like the opening and closing of the grave. That has to happen for a traditional funeral, no question. So you can choose to go ahead and fund it at today's cost, knowing that it's not going to be guaranteed or frozen, but if the grave diggers went up, you would have to pay just the difference in that. Also, if you put an obituary in the newspaper, we will put it on our website, Enrique Stokes, if you're okay with that, for free. But if you want it in any newspaper, just about they're going to charge. So there's that cost. If you have a hairdresser come in, there's a charge for that, because they're coming out of their salon to the funeral home, to help with the cosmetizing or hair fixing. The death certificates, the state sets those, not us. So all those things that I've just told you, honorarium for your speaker, musician, any of that kind of thing that you wanted to give gifts to people that, were going to help with your service. You can fund those things. In other words, you can put an amount of money. Flowers is another one. If you know that you want a blanket of flowers or you want certain things, you can put an amount of money there to, to make sure that there's money there to take care of that. However, it's not guaranteed. Those things will not be guaranteed, but it's things that'll have to happen for most of those particular services that I just mentioned. there was something I was going to say and it left me. Maybe it'll come back. Oh, Medicaid. So if you have, as caregivers, you know, maybe you are caring for your loved one at home, or maybe you're having, I think one lady said that hers was in the nursing home, or maybe that's something that you have to face down the road. Medicaid will allow you to spend money in your savings for your funeral, okay? So that is one of the few things that they will approve as an expenditure, you know, within that time frame. Was it, y'all said 5 years? So within the last 5 years. So we have, you know, families that come in all the time because their loved ones reach the level of care that they can no longer handle it with whatever provision they were doing currently. And they're going to have to go into a higher level of care, meaning a nursing home or long-term care facility of some kind. And so that is what you can do with the money to get down to qualify. And it can't be, I mean, it has to be reasonable. Of course, they have guidelines. You can't just like put $30,000 down for your funeral, because that's also something we have to mark it irrevocable for Medicaid to approve it. And that means there's no cash back to the family on that. So you don't want to overinflate what you're going to be providing. But it is, we all, you know, will have to face that. So that's good that they do allow that. And you can pay a little or all at once, however you want to do it. But those are the things that need to be customized and personalized to the particular situation or person. We all have different situations, so that's why it's always best to set an appointment and come in and let us talk privately with you, and we can get your pre-arrangements in place. I've got in this little booklet in the very back, well, my card is in there, so y'all can reach me easily, and I work from my cell number, so feel free to use it. There is, and I've said a lot of these, but I've got you a flyer, and the name of it is There's Never Been a Better Time to Plan Ahead. So there's that one that gives you all the reasons in case you know, I've talked too fast or whatever. The next flyer that's in there is all of those tasks. It lists 125 tasks that you're going to need to take care of, or questions that you're going to need to know the answers to. And you know, it might be just something as small, like they've got the name, the address, all that's on there. But it's things that you've got to fill out and know. So I've got that in there for you. There is a guide to funeral planning in there, and you know, some other little things. But the main thing is to make the decision to go ahead and do your pre-arrangements. And I've got my calendar if y'all want to set up an appointment before you leave today, or you can call me, you know, either way, and I can be very flexible. So has anybody got any questions? Okay.
What if you go ahead and you set up your pre-arrangement plans, and 5, 10 years later, you're still alive and you've changed your mind about some of the things? That's something that concerns me about pre-arrangement.
Well, your money is still going to be there, okay? If you change it, like if you change dispositions, for instance.
Let's say you wanted a casket and a traditional, and you decide you want to be cremated.
Okay. Well, what we'll do is shift the money around to fit other things for that cremation.
Okay, so
We'll shift it around.
You still have the amount of money you
Yes,
need with
absolutely,
shift
absolutely.
your details.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And I will tell you, Kendall Glover is really good about that, and he's honest and fair. So, anybody else?
What happens if you don't finish paying for it before you pass?
Okay, that's a great question. So because the money is being held in an insurance policy and not just in some savings account, I can insure, I'm a licensed insurance agent, and I can write a pre-need insurance someone with stage 4 lung cancer. Now, your choices are you can do a paid up policy depending on your age, dictates how long you can go with payments and all that. But to answer your question, if you are healthy, if you don't have pre-existing conditions, that's where the insurance comes in. Let's say you took out a 5-year payment plan and you pass away half that time in 2.5 years, your family does not have to keep paying on that. It's done. It's paid for, and that's the insurance part of it. Now, if you, let me just go ahead and clarify, if a person does have, let's say cancer as a pre-existing. We've talked about cancer a lot today. I've heard it a lot of times. But let's say that they did, and they passed away in the, let's say, the 15th month. Okay, so that's the first half of the second year, right? Okay, so they're going to pay like 35% of the face amount of that policy plus 5% growth. If they make it 2 years and 1 day, that is the thing you have to know about insurance. They make it 2 years and 1 day, even with stage 4 lung cancer, they are 100% covered. The second half of that second year is 70%. So it's a graded or rated benefit if you have a serious pre-existing condition. Does that answer your question? Anybody else?
Because all funeral homes are not approved to do pre-planning, do you have that website where they can go and look to see if that funeral home is on that website?
We do have a website. We have a Facebook page and a website.
No, like the Alabama.
Yes, then you
website.
can go to the Alabama Funeral Directors, I think, or something. Yeah, just Google it there's something on there that'll give you some general information or give you funeral homes in your area. Anybody else? Okay.
What if, and most people do have a life insurance policy, that would go to pay their funeral expenses. Do y'all accept that in turn of paying outright money?
Not on a pre-plan. It has to be a new written policy that you can use at need.
Okay.
Now, here's what some people will choose to do on that. Say they have a $10,000 policy. Let's just say it's an easy number to deal with. They've got a $10,000 policy, but they do want to go ahead and pre-plan and take advantage of today's costs, instead of whatever it is at time of need. So what they'll do is do our services and our merchandise on their pre-arrangement, go ahead and take care of that, and then that existing insurance policy can be used for the opening and closing, the obituary, flowers, any of that other stuff, the cash advance items, third-party services. They'll, at time of need, will take an assignment on those. But you can't pre-plan with an existing insurance. There has to be growth. Yeah.
I've been lucky to deal with you just recently. I mean, it's been.
Well, I don't know if it was lucky, but you have.
Well, sir, you made everything go through real smoothly.
Well, thank you.
And as far as the time, if you want to pre-plan with somebody, like my father, how long does it usually take as far as the pre-planning meeting goes?
Well, for you and I, it won't take long because
Right.
I've already, because we have so much information from your stepmom's file. So I will not have to ask him as many questions or you, but, and we can transfer, some of that into his. But, I mean, tops, an hour.
Okay.
Tops, 45 minutes to an hour. And you can do that for him. But I know he still wants to be involved.
Right.
No, we're not going to leave him out.
I just want to tell you thank you for your services.
Oh, well,
It was
thank
fantastic.
you. I appreciate you sharing that. Anybody else? I know we're at 12:30, so they're, okay. Thank you.